Hello, and welcome to Inquiring Minds, the Writing and Literacy SIG podcast. My name is Kyley Pulphus.
And my name is Alex Corbitt.
And we will be the host for this episode.
The Writing and Literacies SIG podcast aims to highlight scholarship, discuss contemporary issues, and engage in conversation with SIG members and the greater writing and literacies field. Through a robust dialogue, we hope to ignite nationwide discussion among faculty and graduate students concerning topics that are timely and pertinent to the scholarship of writing, literacies, and the broader field of education. This episode is centered on the topic of freedom and joy.
Inspired by Juneteenth, also widely known as Freedom Day, which commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans, we were excited to be in conversation with three incredible women who center equity in their work. Shauna Brown is the owner and founder of Teach for the Culture, LLC. She is a graduate of Temple University, Bachelor of Science, and Columbia University, Master of Arts in Urban Education and Ed Policy, and has served in public education spaces in various capacities for nearly 2 decades. She has worked with schools, children, youth, and educators in large cities, including Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Brooklyn, New York, and Hartford, Connecticut, as well as various cities across the nation. In addition to running a small business and serving as a full-time educator, Shauna is an author and an international speaker. She is the proud mother of a teenage son and enjoys traveling, photography, and trying new recipes.
Jamila Lyiscott, also known as Dr. J, is an aspiring waymaker, a community-engaged scholar, nationally renowned speaker, and the author of Black Appetite, White Food, Issues of Race, Voice, and Justice Within and Beyond the Classroom. She currently serves as an assistant professor of social justice education at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where she is the co-founder and co-director of the Center of Racial Justice and Youth Engaged Research. Dr. J is most well known for being featured on TED.com, where her video, 3 Ways to Speak English, has been viewed over 5 million times, and for her commissioned TED Talk 2053. Dr. J is the recipient of the AERA Outstanding Public Communication of Education Research Award, the AERA Scholar Activist and Community Advocacy Award, and the CIES Ernest D. Morrell Emerging Scholar Award. She has been invited to keynote at hundreds of institutions nationally and internationally. Dr. J's scholarship and activism work together to explore, assert, and defend the value of Black life globally. Her research examines the liberatory capacities of literacies in the lives of youth of color, racial healing, youth-led research, and the capacity of African diasporic culture to transgress white coloniality. Dr. J serves as co-editor of the Journal of Equity and Excellence in Education and holds faculty fellowships at the University of Notre Dame and Teachers College Columbia University. In her active efforts to disrupt the bounds of the Academy, she has also been featured in Spike Lee's Two Fists Up, on BBC Radio, NPR, Cosmopolitan, Now This, and many other media outlets nationally and internationally.
And Rashida Govan is an educator, scholar activist, and writer who has worked for nearly 25 years in education, policy advocacy, and youth development. Govan considers her research the academic complement to the organizing efforts of Black and Brown people in pursuit of more just and well communities of color. She uses her research to amplify the power of marginalized people and to center their voices, experiences, and ideas to transform systems, institutions, and communities. Rashida has spent much of her career cultivating safe and just spaces that promote healing, learning, and movement building for youth, families, and community. She is the founder of Project Butterfly New Orleans, an African-centered rites of passage program for girls that has served nearly 400 girls of African descent since its inception in 2009. She is also the executive director of the New Orleans Youth Alliance, a youth development intermediary that adopts a healing justice approach to support a system of high-quality youth development programs in centering youth leadership and equity in their work. Rashida has also spoken nationally and internationally on a wide range of issues, including healing, justice, racial equity, and trauma-informed practice in education and youth development. She has spoken widely on issues concerning Black girls and women and is frequently sought to speak on issues impacting young people. Govan is a proud graduate of Morgan State University, the University of Maryland, and the University of New Orleans. These women shared insights that were both enlightening and affirming, and reminded us that we should be listening to and learning from the young people in our classrooms and in our lives.
Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. We couldn't be more excited to be in conversation and learn from three amazing, brilliant, incredible, dope women, Dr. Rashida Govan, Shauna Brown, and Dr. Jamila Lyiscott, as they share their thoughts and feelings about freedom and joy in educational spaces. Thank you, ladies, so much for being with us today. So this episode was inspired by Juneteenth, and Juneteenth is Freedom Day, and it's a celebration. And so we want to start off with a really serious question, right? Now, when folks come together to celebrate, they eat. Now, if you had to pick just one food from this group that had to go, which would you pick? That means you cannot have it ever again. The foods are mac and cheese, candy yams, cornbread, or collard greens. Which one gotta go?
That was super easy for me. That was the get rid of the cornbread. Sorry, folks. Everybody's cornbread might don't make it. And that's the most academic way I could say that. Sometimes y'all cornbread is dry and I don't never have to have it again.
Even though I feel that not all cornbread is created equal, I'm gonna have to say collard greens for me because it's our, listen, this is a safe space, right? Okay. It's all right. Collard greens are all right. The rest of mac and cheese, candy as cornbread, I'm gonna keep those.
And I'm actually gonna have to agree with Dr. J. The collard greens can go for me. Like cornbread, I love. The mac and cheese, it's just a staple. And candy yams, like, what is life without it? So bye-bye collard greens.
Amen.
Can I ask, is there one that we can all agree that has to stay? If we could only have one of those four,
Mac and
which
cheese.
one?
I could live off mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese, mac and cheese, everybody. Mac and cheese. I have yet to find someone not say mac and cheese is the one that has to stay of all the four of them. All right, thank you, ladies. Thank you. Okay, so on to another question. Asada Shakur said, "I'm not sure what freedom is, but I know damn well what it ain't. How have we gotten so silly?" What's your thinking about that quote? What's the silliness that you've seen? And do you think you've seen freedom?
So I can just start by saying freedom is not freedom for just some. So even within Black spaces, when some people talk about freedom, they're talking about freedom for a certain type of Black person. That's not freedom. Freedom is for all. So it's Black freedom for LGBTQ, Black freedom for women, Black freedom for men. It's Black freedom, period, no matter where you are on the globe. And the silliness is when people talk about, Black freedom and Black liberation, and they're not even inclusive of all Black people. So I'm just gonna start that way.
I appreciated your response for all I support all of that. And I was hyped when I saw that quote come through. It's like one we were going to work with because Asada's autobiography is one of the most important books that I've ever read. And that particular quote I ponder frequently. And so when I think about freedom and what it means to me, I think about freedom being like our capacity or my capacity to operate outside of the constructs or confines of white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy in all its iterations. Like for me, if I can't get away from that, then I'm not free. And so I have not tasted freedom yet. But I am in a constant state of pursuit. Like I'm constantly pursuing that as like my highest goal and ideal is like around being a free person, a free thinking woman, free from the confines of those horrible constructs. And then the silliness I think that I've seen is freedom being reduced to like financial freedom, which is still roped up into capitalism, or I get to travel, but your family is desolate and struggling. Like this idea that freedom is tied to moments or something that you have to work towards is kind of ridiculous to me. It's kind of silly to me. So that's what I would say to that.
Wow, that really resonates. I'm like chewing on this quote, and thinking about freedom as something that has the capacity to be very concrete, but then also an abstraction. I'm thinking about it in the same realm of things like love and God, that we may not have the language to truly capture what it is, but we absolutely know what it's not. And so this resonates deeply because there's so many iterations and there's so much nuance to what freedom can be, right? You spoke about, it's like this reaching towards. And so when we think about the concept of love, we've probably spent a couple thousand years trying to articulate what love is, and we still have not been able to like pin it down. And so I think about that when grappling with notions of freedom. And this idea of silliness for me, what it brings to mind is the kind of gaslighting that comes from institutional powers, from the dominant mainstream consciousness about what we know is not freedom, right? So those things that we know do not feel like freedom, for example, the kind of false social mobility or meritocracy attached to schooling and education, it's silly to gaslight us with that as some type of tool or access to freedom. And we try to crystallize that into the American consciousness, right? That these systems of education are the great equalizer, or that's silly. And so I'll just start there and just, I don't know that I've ever, I've seen freedom because it is this nuanced and textured thing. Like I've felt freedom. I've come home to myself and been liberated from the validation of various institutions, or my own journey of healing, personally, racial healing. So those different iterations of freedom, I see freedom when we unapologetically just relish in the fullness of our communities without need for the kind of sanctioning that comes from mostly white supremacist consciousness and those modes of validation that we're used to seeking and needing for our survival. And so I've seen glimpses of it.
And I could just say quickly, like, I think the closest times that I've felt the most free is when I'm outside of the US. It's when I'm outside of the white gaze. So going home and being in Ghana, West Africa for a few years ago, I felt free. I felt a type of freedom I had never felt before. Just being at home, being able to be myself and being around other people. When I go home to the Caribbean, there's another level where I feel a sense of freedom, just be beyond and outside of the white gaze. And just in times where I'm just fully myself without any kind of boundary or limitation. To me, also freedom begins within the mind. And so it's those moments where I don't care what anybody thinks or feels about me or the way I move or the way I operate. Those are times in which I have felt free. But again, I agree that it's a pursuit. It's something that it's something that I feel like you never just attain and just sit there. It's something I'm always kind of striving for and in pursuit of, and just feeling at certain moments. But when I am there, it does feel great.
Oh, I want to jump back on that. I definitely vibe with what all y'all are saying. And I think about this. My partner's from Ghana, and he talks about his experience going home in a similar way. And I think about like when I travel. That's why I said it's not traveling for me. And the reason why is because travel is transformative, right? Like I enjoy it, and it is when I'm outside of the United States that I feel most relaxed, sometimes safer, most times safer, quite frankly, and able to be present with myself in a way that I struggle to do here because I feel like I'm constantly have to have my head on a swivel, right? Because there is like this constant state of at least it feels like this for me, struggle and attack. And so I'm trying to pursue an existence that is outside of that, right? But to me, when I'm traveling, it's like it feels like a moment that I want to be present and relish. But I feel like this should be my life all the time, right? The ease, the freedom, the presence, like being able to be present with myself and my thoughts in a moment with my family or with whomever is around me or with nature. And I honestly feel like that is like a constant pursuit for me, and that I have not tasted that. I mean, even today, I was in a wellness kind of cohort that I have going on right now, and one of the things that we did was a meditation where we were talking about, we were affirming to ourselves, or asking ourselves, may I be happy, may I be safe, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. And I started trying to think of like, when have I felt those ways? And it's like there's all of these, there's a struggle that I experience. There are moments where I feel those things, but I think, when I think about all the people and the context in which that happened, um, I feel super vulnerable because my happiness, my safety, my health and ease is constantly like being compromised by so many external forces in my daily life. And I want to be honest about that. And freedom for me, is a consistent aspiration because I really believe that I should and can have a life free of that.
That's just making me think about the layer of capitalism. Like I think because I travel a lot, and when I travel outside of the country is when I think like I put the most solid boundary around what's pulling at me, what's being asked of me. And here in this country, our very survival, our existence hinges so readily on our capacity to keep producing and keep being engaged and keep being, and in a way that it doesn't exist in other parts of the world. So like my family is Caribbean, and you can really spend a solid 70% of your time just liming, like in Trinidad, like chilling, like, just existing, being in community, laughter, food, connection. Like life is not about nonstop production for this illusion of advancement that I think we're so tethered to here for a variety of reasons. It's not just the capital, but the way that it intersects with what it means to be racialized in this space and to survive. And so I definitely resonate with that sense of freedom outside of this nation.
I appreciate your vulnerability and that, all of you. All right, so my next question is, we have the lovely Shauna Brown of Teach for the Culture here, and Shauna has a shirt that says joy and learning must coexist, right? And so often when people are trying to be culturally responsive, culturally relevant, culturally sustaining, they center Black trauma and Black pain, right? Because they think that's what it means to be culturally relevant. We're going to talk about all the harmful things that we've done to Black people. But Black people are so much more than the harm that's done to them. They're also quite joyful. So talk about what the importance of having joyful spaces in educational spaces, especially for Black and Brown youth.
I mean, I think about spaces where our young people feel fully accepted and embraced. Um, and so I guess also I want to answer this in two different ways. One is space in terms of like the space that we occupy with each other. So our relationships to each other, I think, is part of that for me. And the other part is like physical spaces. But I always start everything with relationships, and like joyful, like how do I celebrate the joy and genius of Black and Brown children? How do we like create spaces to really cultivate that? Is to actually just let people be. I was with my young people last night, doing critical social analysis work, and I asked them what's their radical dream, right? What's your radical dream? And they're like, what does that even mean? And so they start talking about existing in a space where they can feel safe, where they can wear what they want and not be judged for it, where being able to be accepted for who they are, being able to express their ideas in ways that won't cause them harm. And I'm like, bet like this could be that for you, right? And like just the fact that we create and carve out space for them to actually dream instead of like conforming, right? And or repeating what somebody else expects from them. It's like creating, for me, the joy is being accepted and being who you are fully, right? Like for me, that's joy. I want to shout out Black Education for NOLA, BNOLA, which is an organization in New Orleans. And it's my homegirl Stevie does their social. And she does a lot of stuff like community partnerships and so on. But if you follow them on social, she always got like somebody twerking. She like has our second line culture, Mardi Gras Indians are on there, and there's so many expressions of Black joy and genius. And folks are like, what does that have to do with education? It's actually everything, right? For me, it is all the things. We are all of these ways that we express ourselves, all the ways that we've been able to create and cultivate our ideas and express our culture in such wonderfully colorful and joyful ways. Like all of that should be a part of our learning, every learning space that we're in. And learning also is bigger than in classrooms, right? Because I feel like I love school. Like, I don't know why I love school, but I loved school. But I felt that learning for me was the most joyful when it was practical, when I was applying stuff, when I was like, ooh, I could use this knowledge to build something with my community. For me, like, basically self-actualization and spaces where people can self-actualize and can be fully who they are the spaces where our joy and our genius can be really uplifted and embraced.
Word, that resonates a lot. And I'm thinking about the answer to this question in two ways as well. First of all, I have the sweater version of that quote from Shauna, and I know people tired of seeing me in it. So I'm like, listen, I'm wearing this every day. I wash it, but I'm wearing it every day. So I am thinking about it in two ways. The first is just the fundamental physiology of it all. Now, physiologically, and I'm getting nerdy with it on a certain level, because neuroscientifically and physiologically, when our nervous systems and our bodies don't feel safe, it is not possible for our cognitive functions to operate on the same level. It is physically impossible to learn at the same level when your body is in fight or flight mode. And so nervous system regulation is essential to the way that we can actually acquire knowledge, produce knowledge, and engage in the full range of our humanity. And so to the degree that we understand, like the really great, amazing book, The Body Keeps the Score, teaches us about the way that trauma and pain and anxiety lives in our bodies, we have to be mindful of how the conditions of learning are essential for the possibility of acquiring knowledge and learning in the first place. So related to the nervous system and related to the actual neuroscience of the brain and what is activated and deactivated if you are in anxious mode, you're preparing for high stakes tests and your brain is in anxiety mode and cannot even process information the way that it would if it felt safe. Whether you know it or not, whether you actually have the knowledge or not, it severely limits what's possible. So that's just one level of it. The other level of it for me comes from just some of the work that I've been doing with a dope doctoral student, Damaris Dunn, who's been thinking a lot about, well, what does it mean when it's kind of like we have this ping pong effect, right? Because we are responding to the trauma and grief, then I think we can become really finite with the concept of joy. And what we really need access to is all the things, right? All of our emotional range makes up our full humanity. Our emotional range makes us fully human. And actually, all of those emotions are healthy. The grief, the pain, like we need to process grief and process trauma and just be chill or be turned up. Like we need access to all of it. But what I think happens is I'm thinking about like Mike Brown. I always think of this example, but it's one of many, honestly, where, you know, in spite of him being murdered in the back by an officer, so much of the narrative was spent trying to figure out what he did earlier that day that would make it permissible for him to be shot in the back. Like it just didn't make any sense. It's almost like they had to try to malign his character to make this justifiable, where the reality is that Mike Brown should be alive, whether he committed a crime or not. right? So like we need the possibility of being complicated, of sometimes being angry and all of the things, and still being alive and still being well. So I believe this quote passionately, which is why I rock the shirt all the time. And I know that I don't want us to just rush so much into joy as a reaction that we don't realize that what we actually really need is all the things. And we haven't been allowed that. And so I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. And what both of you said has resonated with me just so much. But I want to just piggyback off of what you were just saying, Jamila. Being allowed to have access to all of the things is being human. Mm-hmm. And so when I talk about, when we talk about joy and learning and how those must coexist, it's allowing us to be human, mm-hmm. right? So many times in schools that humanity is kind of stripped and minimized. Our young people, we are all looked at as just a lot of times like, what can we produce? What can we do? It's this transactional thing. Okay, you hand this in, you get this grade. You do this, I do that, without recognizing people as full humans, just for too long. And I also just want to say that when I think of joy existing within schools and spaces and young people having access to that, that is the opposite of the colonial structures, the colonial schooling that we have inherited. Yeah. Within Europe, they have a culture of, they call it the stiff upper lip, mm-hmm. where they're supposed to be, stoic and expressionless and, hold in emotion. Joy is the opposite of all of that. So my thing is like, scratch that. Like we're living, we're human, we're expressive, especially as Black people. We bring joy, we embody joy. We show up in that way. It's not something that can be, mandated or, okay, time to be joyful. No, this is us. And so just being free, being able to express ourselves, being able to feel all the emotions, being able to learn within that context, to me is very powerful. And again, tied back, to the neuroscience of it, the physiological aspect. You can't survive. We cannot be our best selves if we're not allowed to be human and feel all of the things and be treated as such within the space. And so white supremacy culture will, like, one of the main goals is to keep us so that we're depleted, to keep us so that we're always in that fight mode, always in survival mode, always in the mode of questioning and on the defense, which has devastating effects on our body, right? And our physical well-being and our health. Yeah. And so being able to break through all of that so we can be our very best selves and we can thrive at the highest level and be expressive and be who we are, to me, is critical within education.
Yeah, I want to just lift that up some more because I do think it is important for us to recognize how often we are implicit in the oppression and suppression of our identity and of our joy. Sometimes, and I'm not talking about like us personally, but like I think when I look at school settings, I think about my own, not my experiences growing up, because it wasn't like this where I grew up. I grew up in a very Black city, Black spaces, but being in school spaces now is like silent lunch. Mm-hmm. Or, you're at a graduation, which is like this important and momentous benchmark in your life. And it's like, please do not clap your hands until no applause until everybody is done. It's like, hell no, that's not what we do. Just all of those different things are, you can't wear these particular colors, or I gotta, monitor and we gotta review your prom dresses, and all of these different things to suppress our cultural expression, our expression of joy in spaces where we've been oppressed in so many ways. It's just like, it begs the question, what about our expression of joy offends you so much? Right? What is so offensive? Why does this get under your skin? And like my mother used to tell me, she used to say, Rashida, beware of anybody who tries to deny you education, discourage your education, always. Like that is your enemy, period. That's the same thing I have to apply to this idea around joy. Mm-hmm. Like people who try to steal your joy, that's your enemy, period. And I think that one other thing I will say is, like, in my movement work, when I was younger in this work, I remember feeling like happiness was not valuable. It was just like a waste of time. It was a distraction. I really believe that. Like, we got to be on the grind and struggle. And I feel like that's a lot of how we talk. We used to talk in this in the work, at least the work in the way I experienced it. And that as I have gotten older and actually gotten healthier, and I've healed from a lot of the struggle and trauma that I've experienced in my life, I realized how much of a priority joy is in all things. In all things. And so my radical dream for our children and our community, at least part of it, is that we can create spaces that are a reflection of who we are at our core, and that we are joyful in it. Like, that we can, actually experience happiness, elation, and love in all parts of how we show it with each other. That would be wonderful to me, right? To be in a joyful and loving space with my people, building something that looks like us. That's a reflection of who we are. That's it for me.
It's actually kind of wild because it's really sick. Maybe this is more that silliness for me. Hearing, just even someone said earlier, you asked about this, what's the radical dream that you have? And students are just like, to feel safe. That's the radical dream. And the idea that we have to construct a sentence that says students need to feel safe in order to learn is like really it's just mind blowing for me. And it speaks to another layer of what intersects with the racism and the racial capitalism and the colonialism, is this logic of carcerality and control. You asked the question about what threatens you about our joy. What threatens them is that it's this structure of carcerality and control that's tethered to colonialism, that is meant to keep Black bodies confined in a particular way, or else ... We know historically how we've been constructed as violent, but it's that logic that would say that you have to have a silent lunch, children, the babies, it's really wild. And as you were speaking earlier, Shauna, I was thinking about, I'm a church girl. I grew up in a Black church. And one of the things we always struggled with was like, just kind of in so many ways inheriting this logic about worship needing to be really restrained and look a certain way, where within our cultural practices, worship is expressive and the way we engage, and it would be framed as just like wrong. And so the cognitive dissonance that comes with just trying to be fully who you are in a space that's supposed to be connected to spirit, but coming up against white supremacy culture and that colonial logic, it's really wild what it does to your mind, And the last thing I'll say, in just resonating with what you shared, Rashida, is that in this notion of joy, right? Like I had to grow into that understanding that my healed self makes me most available to the work that I'm committed to doing. I can't be fully available to this work and to this world when I am navigating so many levels of pain and trauma. Then I'm tending to that, right? So like, there's also just a very logical way that we have to prioritize joy, healing, elation, as you said. I love the use of that word, if we really care about ourselves in the work and the work itself.
Your reflections on your experience growing up in the church is like resonated with me, because I'm Episcopalian, and my church is like West Indian, West African, African American, and it was like, we turn up, like if we party, if we dance together, whatever. But in church, it was like, oh man, it's like so
right?
like,
Inheriting that, yeah.
So antithetical to like how we actually operate in life. It was like, wait a minute, what's happening here? And we can't sing that well. I don't know what's going on, but we do. I do feel like it's so much like, I think that we put on our young people, put on ourselves to operate in certain spaces to be respected, or to conform so that we can be treated well. And it's like, again, I go back to like what I think we talked about a little earlier. Is like freedom shouldn't be a moment. Freedom shouldn't be like something that we have to work towards. It should be like inherently ours.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here we are. So it's just what you said just like made me think about that. Like, oh Lord.
So my family also attends Episcopal Church, all, West Indian, West African, African American. And I feel you on it 100%, but same over here. Like we still turn up in there. But what you said, Rashida, just made me think about, why is, your question earlier, why is joy such a threat to the white supremacy culture? And it's because of the power of it. Like joy is something that was handed down to us, to our ancestors. Like it lives within us, right? We control it and try to contain it just to fit into these spaces that don't allow for it, or try to control it or put a cap on it. But this part of who we are, like it's a part of our being, part of our identity. And when we embrace that and move as a culture with joy, like we can't be stopped. It brings an energy, it brings that feeling, that knowing that we just are unstoppable, right? And so I think that is part of the reason that people try to contain it or control it, or they're offended by it because they know the power.
If we operate in our full capacity with joy in it, they can't handle that. Look at it, they can't handle us now. Right? Like if we really was, I think free Black people terrifies this nation. Everything we're seeing now is literally a backlash to the world standing up and saying that Black lives matter. Nothing too crazy, just we matter. Nothing above that. The world said that, and white America said, oh, nah, we changing laws. We change it. Like they turned up because the world took a moment, and I do mean a moment, to say Black lives matter. They can't handle it. You so right.
But they be trying to commodify it though. They're gonna try to find a way to bottle it and sell it. They're gonna try to find a way to put it on a shirt every time. And it always, the expression is always so fraudulent that it just doesn't convey like the real source of that joy. But it's intense. This place is intense. It's
because they know its value.
Yes.
The same time they try to, and this is what I be talking about in school, is like, you can't put a red pen through my culture and my identity in school and then capitalize off of it. You literally telling me you want me to access power. How powerful is Black culture in our society, in our world? First thing companies turn to gain mass appeal, Black cultural practices, right? Listen, you said nothing but a word.
I'm just sitting and thinking with everybody's words. Dr. Govan talking about spaces where Black youth and youth of color can self-actualize and be themselves. Dr. Lyiscott talking about spaces that care for our bodies and open up the conditions for learning that allow the brain to be activated. Shauna and everyone kind of retweeting her about talking about disrupting the transactional and colonial structures of school that deny learning joy and expression. Is there anybody in your lives, it could be a friend, it could be a teacher, it could be a kid, who kind of pushes your thinking about what joyful learning can be? Do you have any kind of stories for us or gems?
I mean, I'm gonna talk about a couple people because I'm surrounded and I'm so grateful. But I have a rites of passage program. It's an African Center rites of passage program called Project Butterfly New Orleans. And my homegirl, Michelle, is my partner in this. And Michelle is tall and fat, and I'm tall and getting fatter. And she pushes me because, I'm significantly older, probably, I don't know, not significant, I mean, 10, 11 years older, whatever. But she grew up in a different kind of time. So she's really helped me to stretch my thinking about gender. She's helped me to stretch. I mean, and this has been a journey for me. And I just want to be transparent. Like, it's been a road to get to being an ally, right? Like, I feel like I've always recognized people's value, but really understanding and stretching my thinking about how people exist and how they should be able to exist and express their identity in the ways that they do. She really stretches me in that way. She has stretched me to think about like body politics and body terrorism in ways that like have made me really have to like think about, damn, like, how do I even see my own body? How do I like value my body or place value on my body within the context of spaces that say I should look a certain way? Like, How do I value myself? I know it might seem like kind of strange, but like my homegirl gonna have her stomach out. She gonna wear tight clothes, and meanwhile I'm sitting at home worrying about like, oh, my back fat is looking a certain kind of way, and I know y'all might think it's like, I don't know what you think, but it might seem silly. But being a black woman who is 6'2.5", moving in this world, trying to embrace myself it's been a journey. It's been a journey in a space that's consistently telling you how you should be, how you should look, how you should operate, how you should express yourself. And why she's been so important to me is I see myself as being really like tethered to some of those ideas, and I have to spend time committing to work through it. So what she does by showing up in her full authentic self, fully embracing herself, fully loving herself, she gives other people permission, all the girls who show up in their different like in the different ways that they look, in the different ways they think. She has created a space that is so safe, that is so loving, that is so affirming, that it has really like healed me in a lot of ways. So I gotta shout out my homegirl for that. And as far as young people, like all of them help me. Every single one of the young people that I work with helps me to I think the biggest thing is helps to activate my radical imagination, because I think operating within the confines of the big three, white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy, can't impact your capacity to think beyond it, because we're so entrenched in this nonsense. But they help me to remember what it means to dream, what it means to imagine, and then they activate me in a way that makes me say, actually, whatever I imagine, I can construct. We done built it all. Like, we bring life into this world. We have built nations. We have built universities. We have built entire industries and fields of study. Like, we did that. Like, we could do this again. We can do it again. And so I think that's what my young people do on a regular basis, is really inspire me to activate my radical imagination and to dream bigger for myself, and for and with my community.
Thank you for that. So I would just say for me, it started within my home, my family, my parents. My parents are from Jamaica, very, very joyful culture. And just growing up, just joy was just embedded. It's just, to me, it was just a thing. It's just normal. It's part of what we do. And that was with, whether we were learning, whether we were just hanging out together. They weren't afraid to, play. Although it's, considered, so much in your home is like, oh no, don't romp, don't do this, don't do that. But like just being able to they felt free enough to be kids with us, right? So to dance, to do fun things together. If we were on a road trip, to make it fun, to make it like, yes, we're learning, but this is also fun. And these are the ways we're going to like compete and play. And so that was just part of my growing up. And so as an educator, that was, just a part of who I am as well, as part of my identity. They also, one thing I'm very, very thankful for is that from the age of 3, they enrolled my sister and I in an African-centered performing arts center. And so we were there from like age 3 to age 18, where we studied African dance, African history, the culture, drumming, drama, everything. And so, we were doing like, comedic-based meditations when I was like 8 years old, not knowing what it was back then. But now I see what we were doing, and that it really showed me and had a huge impact in my life. And it really showed me that the ways that we embody our culture, the ways that we embody the joy, the possibilities of what it looks like to be in a space where your identity is centered, and how you're connected, how we're connected to our ancestry. And that to me was just so full of joy. And I'm grateful to my parents for, involving us in that.
I got to echo that with the family and the culture. My parents, when they came to this country, they were a young couple, and they were the first in many ways from their village to come. And so they became the center of the community over here, the Trinidadian American community over here, when people were coming along and trying to find their way. And so I was literally raised in community, raised by a village, like raised in the sounds and smells and tastes of culture and connection at all times in that way that is just deep for me. Like a lot of my childhood memories are of my dad just singing calypso and like old time reggae with me and trying to teach me and it's always so deeply connected to Africanity and preservation of history. So I'm like 6 and he's just like teaching me about all these concepts about the land and the blood and the gold and the Africa. I'm just like, okay, like I'm trying to understand it, right? And my mom, who just always unapologetically embraced this aesthetic that connected to an African consciousness and a Caribbeanness. Her father used to build masks for carnival, build the costumes for carnival. So it was just like really rich culture. My grandmother, who's 83 now, you know, while she can't remember anything, if you throw on some so-called calypso, it's a wrap, all right? Sis is whining and like, you just like, oh, she ain't forget that. And so there's something about being raised in those traditions and in that culture that I would say collectively that community and that village has been central. And then I'll say like within academia, for myself as an academic, I'm thinking about Dr. Cynthia Dillard, just because the way that she does academia, it just is so beautiful. If you don't know the work of Dr. Dillard, who just recently published The Spirit of Our Work, she has been bringing cohorts of people to Ghana for years now and engaging them in this just powerful educational experience that is not tethered to the way that we conceptualize schooling or the kind of education connected to schooling. It's very spirit-centered. It's very much communal and, you know, invested in the breaking of bread and in the lineages of ancestry. And there's just something about being in community with Dr. Dillard that helps me to witness and know that there is a fullness and a wholeness that's possible in this work that doesn't necessarily seem possible when people are trying to figure out how to oscillate between the academy and institutions and their real lives. People often seem weathered and overwhelmed. And so there's just something there that I can't even fully name, but I will lift her up as someone who has just epitomized for me what the fullness of joy and the nuance of emotions and teaching and learning can be.
And I want to say one other thing really quickly, similar to what Rashida said, the children definitely remind me of like that they're like naturally joyful. Mm-hmm. We're the ones that drain it out of them over time, but just watching them play, watching them do like little simple things, watching them find joy in the smallest things, from the little babies on up to high school students. They all have this natural joy, this natural curiosity that they just show up with, right? Just being by themselves, just being able to imagine and to play and to construct things with each other without having anything mandated or like just being left alone, just being themselves. They are joyful. And so they inspire me every single day.
Give out another shout out to my nieces. I'm a twin. My nieces are twins. So my twin had twin girls. Oh, wow. And they're 6, and so they talk. That one of them recently was on the phone with me, and she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I just trained some teachers and something." She was like, "Teachers still learn?" And like, yeah, we have to learn forever. Really? And I just think about the joy that I experience and watching them discover the world is
Yes.
so inspiring. Like it just fills me so much because they appreciate such small things that seem very small, but really conceptually are huge, right? Like the building blocks for all the things. And I get to like really see the world through their eyes. I get to see and remember what joy looked like for me as a child when my mom, who spends a lot of time with them, teaches them all the little things that we did, like how to play jacks, or teaching them, like taking them. My mom used to take us to, if it was black, we as a black as a family, we were going to it, and watching them now go to these things and learn about our culture, learn about our heritage, and it being just like, it's not unusual. It's not unusual. It's not different for them. Like they don't feel, I don't know how to explain it except to say, this is who we are as a family. This is who we are as a community. And watching them discover who they are and who we are as a community at this really young, tender age is a beautiful thing. And it makes me really appreciate even more the community that I come from and the mother that I come from, because my mom is the bomb. She's the amazing educator. She really is. She's taught me so very much. And in all the ways that I try to resist being her, I'm so much like her. And I really do appreciate and value like the way that I grew up and the way that my nieces are growing up and what they get to see. And one more shout out to my twin, who was the first African-American judge in our county we're from in New Jersey. Their mom is a judge. So like for them, they're like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And I just, again, the possibilities just seem so damn big when I get to consider them from their perspective, that I am inspired to actually envision a life for me that is so much better than what I have. I'm doing pretty good. But like I realize that there is a freedom that I can attain, or at least that I should work towards. There's an ease that I should be aspiring for, that I am actively pursuing. There's some major changes coming into my world, because this ain't it. This just ain't it.
Word to that. Earlier when you I've done that meditation with Aditi Shah with the may you live with ease. Yo, when that hit, may I live with ease is such a powerful like thing to call into your existence for yourself. It shapes everything. That all resonates with me, especially the nieces. Shout out to my nieces. They're gonna be listening to this one day. They like two.
I love it. So I gotta shout out my son as well. He also, I have him in the African Performing Arts Center, and so he does drumming. He does djembe drumming as well as other African drums and other instruments. And I just remember, he likes to table drum also, right? And so I used to table drum. That was my part. My father used to table drum, so we're all drummers. And a couple of weeks ago, my son was there drumming the table, and I took up my cell phone to record him. And he's like, "Mom, why you gotta steal my joy?" And so for him, it's like, yo, I'm trying to just be me. I'm out here trying to drum and just be free, and you're trying to record it. And so it reminded me, like, it's not about a performance. It's not about capturing. Let him be. He's not trying to perform. He's just being himself. And so here I go with my phone. He's like, nah, just why are you trying to steal my joy? So that taught me something. And, again, kids teach me stuff every day. Young people teach me stuff every single day. They inspire me. And so that was a lesson I took from that.
Well, mic drop on that. Thank you to these beautiful, beautiful, intelligent, dope women who have so many gems that they've dropped today. Thank you so much, Shauna Brown. Thank you, Dr. Rashida Govan, and thank you, Dr. Jamila Lyiscott. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.